Hello, everybody. Catchy1383 with Catchy Gaming, and I played the Monster Hunter Wilds open beta. And I'm not going to do a script for this one. I'm just going to go over some brief thoughts on it. So, it kind of started out rough. I'm not sure if it's my rig or not, but after going through all the fun settings that I didn't bother recording, like who wants to watch me adjust the brightness and stuff like that, you get to the character creation. And this is immediately what I saw. I was like, whoa. And then it filled in. I was like, oh, okay. But there's one thing, you might not be able to tell, but when I was making it, all the detail was kind of pixelated and fuzzy. And I didn't fix it till later because I didn't think to look at the settings when I first initially started the game. But I was like, why is everything kind of fuzzy, especially when I zoom in? And that's when I got to a point when I adjusted the settings, it looked better. So we'll just keep that in mind while I create a character for a bit. So after going through all the various different selections and seeing what some of the sliders did or didn't do, I finally settled on a female character. So after a bit of time, I got to this menu here where it said confirm and change, where it's kind of misleading because they make it out like this is where I confirm what I was wanting in terms of what I adjusted, and then I'd move on, but they blast you with all this information, which it's semi-meaningless because you don't know what the scale is on all of these, and it's kind of irrelevant just to tell me what these numbers are because I really don't know what they mean. It's not like I'm going to specifically remember what each and every single last one of these adjustments is. So I don't know why they have all this information blasted at you, but they do. So after backing up enough, I finally got to the menus with the sliders and stuff like that. And I messed around with them, just seeing what they did. And they did, for the most part, what I would expect them to do. They added a little bit more detail than I would think. So let's take this tattoo. I was just messing, or not tattoo, face paint. I was just messing with it, and you can rotate it and change the position and stuff with a clever sort of menu there. And I finally settled on this sort of, I don't know, horizontal lines going across the eyes and all the other fun stuff. But the other part that kind of surprised me are the teeth. You can customize the color of the teeth of the character. Like just pretty much anything you can manage to pull up on that color wheel, you can make your teeth that color. I was like, oh. And I had a little bit of a laugh with that. And then I moved on to my Palico. So here you have something similar where you can take paint or other markings and you can move them around. And this is where I sort of make my embodiment of my, I guess, avatar slash persona with my particular Palico here, in which I make a black cat with a white spot on its chest, typical of a catchy from Irish folklore slash Scottish, more Scottish than Irish, but they share similarities. I usually just don't identify with any character as long as it's mechanically entertaining and maybe with an interesting story. I usually just don't care what I'm playing. So this one made me a little happy because I got to actually have a representation of my avatar as a personal assistant. So that was neat. It's not really all that important. I could live with or without it. So the game starts, and it starts with this cutscene. I'm like, okay, it's kind of good looking, even though everything was a bit pixelated and weird looking when I was making my character customization. Then it goes to a flashback, and everything was just hideous in comparison. Like, there's a huge drop in quality. I don't know if they did that on purpose because it's a flashback, but they did. So they have a segment where you ride what they call a secret or sacred. It sounds very similar to just secret, but I don't know why they called it that. But you ride along this predetermined path and you shoot your. I already can't remember what it's called. I'll just call it glorified slingshot for all intents and purposes. That's not what it is, but you shoot at these monsters, and I really don't get the point of this. This all could have just been done in a cutscene, to be honest. It didn't really serve any purpose. And they didn't really introduce too many mechanics other than you can grapple onto some of the flying monsters and you can shoot projectiles. So when I finally got to a point in the game, I started looking at the settings for my graphics, and I don't know if it determined this by itself or they just automatically set everything to low. But I started enhancing everything, and knowing it would tax my... I shouldn't say tax. It would put more, I don't know, pressure or I don't know, processing power needs to be used for my graphics card, but considering the upper right-hand corner, it shows how much of that's being used. When I first started messing with the settings, less than half. I got it to about 2/3 by the time I was done, boosting everything up to just high. Not even ultra, but high, and it was definite improvement over the visuals. So after choosing a weapon, because they ask you what do you want to do in terms of your play style, and they suggest a weapon, I just said it suggested daggers, and I'm like, no. And I just chose my own weapon, which they should have just done to begin with instead of doing this weird suggestion thing, but whatever. I did make a bit of a mistake here. I thought the no armor thing would just be something that would happen in cutscenes and didn't even think about it until after a situation happened when I was fighting the first monster that you encounter, which I went in without any armor on. So after encountering, I didn't really have that much trouble even though I wasn't wearing armor. My weapon of choice, the insect glaive, was not great, and I was jumping over it, but then it froze after I called in support via the tutorial because they make you do that, and then it froze. So yeah, good start to the beta. I shouldn't say froze. Things were still happening. I just couldn't move or do anything. So I had to shut it down and restart. Luckily, I didn't have to go through that whole entire story bit again. So this time around, because it gave me a second chance, I equipped some armor. I just went with whatever I found was stylish. There's probably not the best choice, but whatever. And I switched to the switch axe because I was jumping over the monster and missing horribly. So I switched the weapon that I am more familiar with outside of the insect glaive. I mean, there's a couple others that I'm familiar with, like the gun lance and the... I can't remember, is it... It's like the sword and shield that turns into an axe. Why can't I remember what it is? I'm sorry. I just can't remember what it is. But yeah, I use that a lot too in previous Monster Hunter games, particularly World and Rise. So after going against the monster again and just absolutely devastating it with the switch axe, and you do the whole entire thing, it more or less, this game just feels like a new version of Monster Hunter Wild, which, yes, it's supposed to be. They tweak some mechanics here and there, but a lot of it also still feels familiar. You have the missions, or quests, if you will, where you get rewards, and you collect parts from the monsters after you kill them. I don't know if there's an option to capture in the beta right now. I did manage to put together a shock trap and some trank bombs, but I did that at the end of where I was streaming. I shouldn't say streaming, recording. I tried recording all of it, but unfortunately I accidentally selected the wrong mic, so everything I was saying was being recorded from a distance. Part of why I'm not going to probably play any audio, because you'll just hear me sounding like I'm 20 feet away when I'm right next to it, due to the nature of my mic. So that's when I just started running around the map, engaging in the various different monsters that they have on this particular map that they put in there. The first thing I fought after that giant green thing were these dog-like things. They're like, you have to kill the alpha, and you have these other two little ones that are right next to it, which made the fight a little bit difficult. They told you to separate them using dung bombs, but I couldn't find any dung to make a dung bomb. So yeah, it took a while to separate them, and it took a really long time to kill these things by myself. I don't know if that's intentional to try and encourage people to play together, or maybe I was just sucking at the whole entire beating the monster up thing. I don't know. It felt a little messed up though, considering how long it took. On top of that, they looked blind, so here I am beating up a blind monster. Maybe this one made me feel bad. Others didn't, but this one did, even though they're vicious and huge. So that's when I encountered the last monster after going through and just killing everything that I could find in terms of monsters, seeing what resources I can get. I didn't spend too much time collecting things because I knew it was rather limited in terms of its crafting and other things. But I finally encountered this Ray Dow. I think that's how it's pronounced. It's a flying electric monster that hits like a brick. I probably could have negated some of the electric damage if I paid attention to the armor, but I didn't. So I fought this thing, and it hurts, like, a lot. So it can hit you and take away half your life in one hit, as you saw right there. That was the last and third, I guess, faint or death I had before it ended the quest of taking it on, which was it sparked a little bit of rage in me and a thirst for revenge. So while I waited for another one to spawn, I went around killing other smaller monsters, gathering herbs, mushrooms, stuff like that. It's still very much a Monster Hunter game like World and Rise. That formula really hasn't changed. Yes, they messed with the combat a little bit. It feels kind of slower, a bit floaty at times, but I'm guessing they might tweak that a little bit since it's only a beta after all. But it has that same semi-open world feeling and stuff like that. I will say the Sacred though, I have some mixed feelings. Yeah, it's kind of neat, but the thing, whenever you mark a place on the map, it'll run to it, which, kind of neat, kind of useful, but at the same time, when you want to just slow down and avoid something, it doesn't care. It has sort of an auto run function to it, and it will just keep running when you want to slow down. Yes, you can tell it to stop by holding like the R trigger, but you just want it to stop. You don't have the same control that you had with, say, like with the Palamute in Monster Hunter Rise. This thing just keeps going and it won't stop. But it doesn't provide the same support as the Palamute either. It doesn't attack. At least I haven't seen it. It might later, but right now it doesn't. But the other thing that like I said, I mix feelings because the whole not stopping and keep constant running. But you can also carry a secondary weapon. So if you need to, you can switch to a totally different weapon depending on the situation. And that was actually really neat. Now, the other thing, I guess, in terms of combat, it more or less feels somewhat similar. In terms of the insect glaive there, or insect glaive. Well, when I was fighting some enemies, you had to collect the essence. And some of the places where the essence needs to be gathered is, in some weird spots, like its underbelly, which are really hard to get to. But they also introduce wounds, which you can open up wounds and cause more damage and stuff like that if you mount them. So that's new. But otherwise, other than being a bit slower, it more or less feels like the same, or very similar to other Monster Hunter games with new monsters and stuff like that. I think people will enjoy this game if you enjoy the Monster Hunter games. And I'm guessing there are things they still need to work out. Like that wasn't the only bug I encountered. There's some clipping issues here and there as well. And I did get my revenge on the Ray Dow, as you just saw. But I give the beta a try while it's still up. I think it's till November. Yes, November 3rd. If you made it this far, thanks for watching. Have a good one.